For the next 45 minutes, you have the opportunity to hear from the IEP corporate affiliate partner, Joe Cook of LightBulb Moment. Joe is an instructional designer and classroom facilitator who specializes in virtual classrooms, webinars, and live online learning technology. Joe will be discussing non-verbal cues in communication, helping to overcome some of the challenges we face in modern remote communication. I've seen a lot of Joe's webinars. They are fabulous. You're in for a treat. So over to you, Joe. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, thank you. What a lovely, lovely introduction from you there, Scott. And I'm really glad to be here today with all of you. I think it's going to be a fantastic day thinking about all sorts of things digital. And the first thing that we're going to do is make sure we know who we are and what we're doing in today's session. So my name's Joe. I started LightBulb Moment in 2013, where we focus purely on live online learning. That's virtual classrooms, webinars, the design, the delivery. I've got a background in all sorts of different kind of industries and learning and development, but I'm not going to bore you with any of that now. You can find that on LinkedIn or wherever you want to go. We do have somebody else with us today. This is Mike. Mike is my producer, so it's his job to help you. So he's in the chat window. It's also his job to try and keep me on time. And you might be thinking, they've got the same name. And that is because we are brother and sister, and we are also business partners and run LightBulb Moment together. So he is there to support you if you need it. What we need to make sure with any live online session is that we know how to use the tools available to us. So what we're going to do, I invite you, if you're on your PC, to have a look at the bottom of your screen and click on the participants icon, please. And once you've done that, what you will have is a panel opened. It's got the names of everybody here, lots of us today, and we've got response icons, things like the green tick and the red X. And we are going to use those today as a really quick, snappy way of communicating. So let's go and click on one of those now, please. A green tick or a red X, it's your choice, whichever one you want to use. Yep, there's also other icons, there's thumbs up and all sorts of things. So it's just so that you've found the panel, we know it's working. About half of you have done that now. Let's get some more of you clicking on that. If you're on a mobile device, it's in a different place, you can find it. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but it's a great way of getting some quick feedback from you. So thank you very much for all of that. What we are looking at in our session today, I want to talk about body language and how important that is face to face, and then start thinking about, well, what does it mean in this digital remote world? We're going to focus about applying that live online, like we are right now in a webinar or a virtual classroom, but also a little bit about how can we use that on social media, on maybe forums like Slack or conversation threads. So we're going to apply it to those kind of areas. Let's use that green tick if you're thinking, this looks okay to me. So let's practice that green tick. If you've got the chat window open, you can always put a specific question in there. And I'll tell you how to use that chat window in just a second if you're not sure how to do it. So lots of green ticks coming through. Thank you very much. Keep those coming if you would like to. The other thing we're going to use a lot of today is the chat window. So if you haven't already, please go and click on the chat speech bubble at the bottom of your screen, and then your panel will open for chat. Now that might be a floating panel that you can move around. It might be on the right of your screen. Please make sure that you've got the send to as everyone. That means I'll see it for your answers, Mike will see it, Helen, Scott, and everyone else. And I encourage you to use that chat window anytime you like to ask a question, make a comment, share something that might be useful. That's our way of communicating today. So we're going to jump into our very first topic, this idea of body language, and we're going to use the chat panel straight away. We know that body language is interpreting the non-verbal communication from people that we're dealing with. Share a little bit in chat, please, that in the work that you do, perhaps with your colleagues, clients, or people that you're training, and so on, Why is this important in your work? So we're going to use that chat window to type an answer, please. So why is body language important with colleagues, clients, people you're training, any situation? So to confirm understanding, that's really important, even something as simple as a nod or a smile maybe. Alan says the Rona, so I haven't heard it called that, Alan. I'm assuming you mean coronavirus is meaning that it's more important. That's what I'm assuming you mean. And thank you for your green tick there, Alan. It's how we communicate, yes, ensure understanding and commitment, to make sure they're not thinking about something else. Yeah, we want that kind of body language interpretation to know that we're having the same conversation. And Jill Fanny, you're sending a message to me privately, and I don't think you mean to do that. So you just need to select to everyone and not just me, in case you meant to do that. So it's about giving you a truer picture of what someone's feeling. Yeah, it's that difference between, yeah, I'm fine, and yeah, I'm fine. You know, it's voice, it's facial expression, it's gestures, it's everything coming together. It says what they're not saying and can give more meaning to what they're saying. Check how someone is feeling. It's the best way of communicating effectively and clearly. Yeah, I'd say it's kind of part of that whole thing. It shows your intention and presenting your personality. It confirms what you're saying, all really interesting stuff. It can show whether you're engaged or disengaged. We've all had that in meetings or conversations with the other half where you're like, are you paying attention to me really? So we know how important body language is in everything that we do. And oh, I love the way you've put that, Andrew. It's part of the communication jigsaw. A lovely way of saying that. Thank you. So what we're looking at here is there are a lot of different ways of communicating here on this slide that is not face-to-face. So a lot of these things, when you think about some of the newer methods of communicating, what are some of the challenges you're experiencing? So again, let's pop those in chat. So I've got anything from letters, which are pretty ancient, and phone calls or a telephone conference and email, through to the more kind of new stuff like maybe Slack or Yammer, or, you know, webinars and virtual meetings that we're all attending, and virtual classroom sessions, which is like teaching with maybe 10 people, social media, and so much more. So what are some of the challenges we've got with these newer ways of communicating with colleagues, with clients, teaching, any other thing that you're doing? Yeah, WhatsApp, Alan, that's another good one. So anything in that instant messaging kind of place. As Telegram, have people heard of Telegram? It's like WhatsApp, but it's not owned by Facebook. So there's loads of different options that we've got. So what are some of the challenges? Sally says there's no tone of voice in an email or a text message or a tweet or something like that, which is why things like emojis and GIFs are so important, to add that little bit of texture almost. Val says clients not having the technology, yeah, and different sectors have different challenges with that, whether it's financial or whether it's compliance. So I work a lot in finance and pharmaceutical industry, and lockdown is a whole other word there. We've got one-word answers, virtual pinboards is another good one, like Pinterest. We can feel an age gap, says Janet, with social media, and I definitely understand that. I was playing with some social media stuff last year, and I was like, I just feel too old for this. This is not for me. We can have technology that doesn't work. It can be harder to read body language virtually. That's an interesting point, Andrew. And I'm glad you said harder and not impossible. We can misunderstand humour, says Carl. Yeah, as somebody who's got a very sarcastic sense of humour, I've had a lot of those problems, Carl. But it can be easy to miss those different things. Christine says you don't get immediate feedback in the same way as face-to-face, and you can't pick up on those body language clues you would normally get. Again, Christine, you've worded that really well, because it's what you normally get. So normally if we were face to face and I was delivering this conference, I'd be looking around at all of your faces, and hopefully you'd smile or laugh at the funny bits, and hopefully you'd look thoughtful, or I'd be able to see if you're bored or not. And that's the bit we're missing today. You're absolutely right. Stephen says poor internet connections, anything around that technology piece can be an absolute challenge. And customers not having the money for the tech or being able to communicate using those tools. And having problems getting people to share information digitally. I understand that one, Sally, that's a struggle. And Mike's saying also, we can misunderstand humour face to face. I think that's a whole other conversation. So I'm going to move swiftly on from that one. Thank you, everybody. We have a number of different challenges with any type of communication, but especially the more modern stuff that we're looking at. What we have, as we've rightly picked out, is a lack of those visual cues. So this could be the person's body or their hand gestures, their facial expressions, tone of voice, and all of those things. Now, you have a lot of that with me today. You can see me, you can hear me, but you can only kind of see a certain part of me. You can't see the rest of what's going on. So you've got some information, but not all of it. And I don't have any of that visual information from you guys. Also, what we have is a bit of more of a focus on the actual language that people are using. And if you've ever seen or been involved in like a Facebook argument or a Twitter chat that's gone a little bit awry, you know, people can pick apart those words much more easily in that written form than perhaps you would do in a conversation where they've wandered off into the ether and you focus more on the communication and the essence of that message. And as we said, things like emoticons or animated GIFs, they're really popular now. How many of you have whole conversations with animated GIFs? Let's use that green tick in the participant channel. I definitely know that I do. So a thumbs up or a green tick or a red X if that's not you. Certainly I have loads of them and I really enjoy them. But they're not for everybody. So some of you are saying yes and some of you are saying no. And there's a definite thumbs down from some of you. So again, some of this comes down to what we're used to, what we like, who we're communicating with, and our own personality. They're neither right nor wrong. It's just about what's going on. We can feel a lack of connection with people. When we're face to face, we can feel we're connecting with a human being. And what we can feel at the moment is that the technology is getting in the way of that connection. And I think it's a really important point is that we can feel like we're just talking at a computer screen, when actually, you know, we've got kind of nearly 60 of us here today. And it's really important to feel like we're talking with other human beings. And that's part of what I want to go through today. And of course, we have all sorts of new ways of working. So social media is a good example of something that's newer to a lot of people. And understanding how to work in that environment, how to use Twitter or LinkedIn and what type of conversations to have can be challenging. So on this session, we are going to do our best to address some of these challenges and improve the way that we're focusing on our workplace communication. We're going to talk through digital body language as it can give us a good model to deal with some of these challenges. And Mike's saying about the Jean-Luc Picard Star Trek face palm kind of icon, we use that one a lot. Now, digital body language, this was developed by somebody called Steve Woods. He's the Chief Technical Officer at Nudge, and he developed this term digital body language back in 2009 for marketing and for sales. And he explains it as the aggregate of digital activity. The key thing here, though, is about the individual. It's not about Google Analytics across your whole website. It's about what one person is clicking and doing. So that's where it started. And we can apply this idea of digital body language, this concept, and using this approach to the idea that we can't see these people necessarily. And we want to turn them back into human beings, into real people in our communication. So let's start with where we are right now, live online. Who has delivered a webinar or virtual classroom? So a webinar is what we're doing now with lots of people. A virtual classroom is more like a training session or with maybe 10 people. So you can type yes or no in chat, or you can use the green ticks or hand up. You can use whichever way you prefer. I accept all ways of communication. So some yeses, some no's, some green ticks, some hands up, some red crosses. Matt said, yep, got the next one in 45 minutes. Oh, I better get a move on then, Matt. Okay, so there's a variety of experience that we've got here. And what I'd like to do is kind of ask you a little bit about what it was like to do those sessions. And the way that I'm going to do that is with a poll. So if you've delivered a session before, so this is if you said yes or green tick, please let me know what was your experience of delivering that. So let me know what that was. So we've got mixed experience here. You might have done one or two. You might have done loads. So let's get some of these votes in and see where you're at. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Now let me share those results. So about half of you are saying haven't done one, and that might be yet, or it might just be not your role, and that's absolutely fine. I'm really glad to see no one hated it. Phew, that makes my life a little bit easier today. But lots of you saying, you know, it wasn't great at first, but it got better, or it was okay, and I liked it. And there's maybe like one person who said they loved it. Was that Helen? I bet that was Helen. So we've got a range of experience here. Let me close that poll and get that off your screen. If it's not off your screen, you can just kind of close that down. So thinking about your experience as a delivery facilitator, but also thinking about your experience as somebody who attends session, what made the experience good or bad for you? So in the chat window, please, whether you're attending or whether you're delivering, what makes the experience good or, you know, not quite so good? So in the chat window, please, what are your thoughts? Interaction is a really strong one coming through, the lack of interaction. And whether you're attendee and you're thinking, oh, I'm bored, I've got nothing to do, I'm not engaged. Or as a facilitator where you're thinking, I don't know if they're there, I don't know if they're listening, I'm not getting anything back from them. That interaction is key. Ability to take part, not knowing whether the tech would work. Yes, Val, that's where we've got to learn stuff and practice where we can. Robin says overcoming self-consciousness. That's an interesting one. So that could be about being on webcam. I can see myself on webcam the whole time and I'm not really liking it, but I know it's important for some people to see that. Technology issues, different types of interaction and managing those tools, which is really important. Thank you, Jill, for your comment. That's lovely. When the deliverer is distracted by the chat. Now, that's an important one because we don't want to go off-piste. We don't want to lose all the time that we've set aside. And also we have to be aware how our tech works. So in Zoom meetings, it doesn't record the chat window. So I want to make sure I read out some of these comments so it's recorded on the recording. It's the personality of the presenter, preparation for the experience, lack of feedback. The chat function can be a distraction if not managed effectively, says Christine. It can, and we need to have a sort of plan for that and design for it. It does depend on the type of session. You're absolutely right, Mark. And interaction is great. Tech difficulties, not so good. Okay, so we've got all sorts of different parts that are involved in what it is that make our sessions great. Now, those of you who found it good, you're in a great place to support your colleagues with what might be a new or different way of working for them. And those of you who felt it wasn't quite so good, haven't done it yet, you can see that some people have found it great and love it. Some people are working through that journey, and it's a journey we're all on to improve. I'm going to cough a second. I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a tickle. Okay, so with webinars and live online sessions, sometimes people don't like them at first because they don't understand them and they can only see the challenges, such as not being able to see the people that they're training. These screen grabs I've got on screen here are a couple of chat windows from virtual classrooms. The one on the left is Adobe Connect, the one on the right is WebEx, just as a little bit of something different from what you can see in Zoom. What we might lack in face-to-face communication, we gain in giving people an equal voice. All of you, if you want to, can type into that chat window. All of you can do that at the same time, different times, as much or a little as you want to share. So it's a level playing field in terms of that capability. Also, there's nobody speaking over you at this point. There's no one waiting to be seen. I've got a point, I've got my hand up, but the presenter hasn't looked at me yet. You can communicate the point you want to communicate to the facilitator. So I'm not misinterpreting your body language. I'm reading what it is that you want to be able to share. So this is why something like the chat window is probably one of my favorite tools in webinars and virtual classrooms. What we are going to do now is we are going to use the whiteboard. So have a look at the top of your screen, please, if you're on a computer, and you should see it says there, you are viewing Joe Cook's screen. Please click View Options and then click on Annotate. And what I would like you to do, please, is just have a little practice with the stamp tools. That's the one that we are going to use. So please go and use your stamp tools. You can actually use any tool you like, I don't mind, but the stamp tool is the main one that we want to use. Now it's going to go a bit crazy because there are lots of you, but let's go and have a practice with that. So we're using those stamp tools. So all you need to do if you're on a computer is look at the very top of the screen, click on View Options, click Annotate. And then when that toolbar has come up, it'll be a floating toolbar on your screen. You can go to where it says the stamp tool. And from there, what you can do, if you move your mouse over it, you get the menu that I've got showing you on the screen. You can select any one of those you like. Now, what's up on the screen is a screen grab. So you need to find your own tool. And if you can't get it working, it is absolutely no problem. We've got a different way of you doing the activity if you want to. So it looks to me like most of you have got this working. So this is absolutely great. So let's just pause. Let's just pause with the artwork, everybody. I'm all for self-expression, but we just need to pause. So let me clear all those drawings and let me bring in the slide with my question on it. So I'd like you to think about the webinars and virtual classrooms and virtual conferences you've been on, and use your stamp tool, please, to select the top 3 things you like about those sessions. So 3 only out of the 6. And if you've not got your annotation tools working or you don't want to use them, you can type 3 numbers into the chat window instead. So you can use the numbers in chat, or you can use whichever stamp tool you like, or whichever tool you like, it doesn't matter which one, and just let us know which are the top 3 things you like about live online sessions. So no cheating, no typing on all of them. Oh, lots of things coming through here. The sharing without interrupting, such as the chat window, expressing an opinion, great for questions. Social collaboration. Not so much on the misreading the body language, but maybe that's a slightly newer concept. In sharing the links and the resources, and in chat, what have we got? Yes, similar, lots of people liking different things. And that's the joy of this. These are all great reasons and great things about live online sessions. But it's interesting about what you find the best for your learning and your attendance, but also for when you are working in a meeting or when you're delivering training or whatever it might be. So there's all sorts of different things that we can do here. Thank you very much for doing that. I'm going to clear all those drawings. And what we're really looking for here is we're trying to involve people. We know that we need that interaction with other people. You've been saying it yourself, that makes a great session. And we know that a really good virtual classroom platform has not only things like chat and audio, but it's got polling, which we've used. It's got whiteboards that we've used. It's got breakout rooms, which I think is going to come up later today, and so much more. Whatever tool you've got, and these screen grabs are all sorts of different tools, it's about making the most of them. So using these tools creatively means that you're encouraging discussions, questions, learning conversations, collaboration, and all of these activities and other ways of kind of involving you is a way for me to see what you are doing. It's a way for me to actually kind of think, well, what is it that people are doing? What are they interpreting? And it's that equivalent of normally I'd look around and I can't do that. So I have to use these tools to start reading your digital body language instead. Now we're going to stay with thinking about kind of personality and people with regards to digital body language, but I want to focus on asynchronous communication when we aren't live together like we are right now. So this would be things like forums or social media. And I'd like you to use your annotation tool again, please, and use the stamp if you can to just say, well, which social media platforms do you use for work or professionally? Or of course, you can put numbers in the chat window instead. So which ones do you use for work? Or, you know, do you use in a professional sense? I'm not thinking about, you know, chatting with people or, you know, your friends and your family. I'm thinking work-wise. What is it that you use? So yeah, LinkedIn's always a really strong one. It's great for connecting to people, for learning. There's LinkedIn Learning on there. It's great for sharing updates and learning from others. So that's always very popular. It's interesting sometimes that Facebook is so popular, but there's a lot of work stuff on there. I know I've joined lots of work Facebook groups. So there's a lot of that coming through. Some of you on Twitter, but not all of you. And again, it's about finding the right tool for your organization, for what you want to achieve. And if you don't like something, then you don't have to use it. Some people using Slack and Yammer and those kind of enterprise tools. A lot of you using YouTube. I imagine there's a lot of you people, a lot of you are people using it for learning. I certainly use it a lot for learning. And of course, there are other things as well. So Maureen has suggested WhatsApp, for instance. So it's great for teams and for collaboration and sharing. And Sally says, Facebook is our key tool for engaging our tenants. I tend to engage with other professionals on Twitter. And that's really key, is looking at, well, what do I use for what purpose? So again, thank you very much for that. It's some really good stuff that you're sharing there. And Jill says, although LinkedIn and Twitter for work and Facebook for our digital division for generations are kind of really echoing that point. So thank you very much, everybody, for sharing those. And what this is kind of leading into is a question I have about what do you find positive about using these platforms for your work. So whether it's Facebook for engaging, like Sally said, with your tenants, or whether it's Twitter for professionals or WhatsApp for collaboration, whatever tool it is, what's positive about using those platforms? Please type your answer in chat. So what's positive about using these platforms for work? It's getting a message out to many people. That broadcast is really important. It's quick, we're connected, we can interact any time of the day. That could also be a shortcoming, but yeah, it's mostly a positive. It's live and available for most people, sharing great content. It's rapid, you can reach a lot of people, freedom of the time of presumably when you want to interact and look at that. Quick responses, you can learn new things from similar companies. You're able to find the information you want. It's instant, it's time efficient. You can keep up with clients or staff celebrating good things, lovely. You can get to a wider audience. It's short, snappy, it can be very visual sometimes. It can be simple. It keeps people connected. Sally makes a great point. When I was juggling work and a toddler, I could catch up with recorded webinars after bedtime, rather than being there live. That's really lovely, Sally. And that's kind of the point of using the right technology in the right way. We can share content. We've got encryption on WhatsApp, for instance, says Andrew, so it's secure, which is really nice. Useful learning, it can be global, and it's getting to people where they already are. That is so important, Sally, because we sometimes call that very professional, we call it in the workflow. But it's just like, if people are on Facebook, go to Facebook. If people use WhatsApp, make a WhatsApp group. That's a really important point. Lovely, thank you so much for that. And I think it's really important also, we have to look about the challenges. So again, in chat, please, what are some of the things that are challenging that you find about these platforms for work? So what are the things that you find are challenging? And hopefully you're picking up ideas from other people. You're thinking maybe, I hadn't seen it that way. Or maybe what I see as a challenge, somebody's seeing as an opportunity, and vice versa. So Zoe says it takes away the professionality sometimes. Yeah, if it's all animated GIFs and emojis and memes or something, it could seem to be taking that away. I can understand that, definitely. Paula says GDPR, yeah, that whole data thing can be a challenge. And there's all sorts of challenges to that people aren't quite used to and picking up on. Yeah, Sally, if tenants aren't online, if people don't have a mobile phone, a Facebook account, whatever it might be, then that's a real challenge of actually connecting with them. There's so many things to keep engaged with. So I usually try and say to people, pick 1 or 2 platforms you're comfortable with, but actually you might have to be across 3 or 4 from a work perspective for some reason. A lot of negative responses, Keith, you're right. So for instance, I'm gluten-free, and I see like Marks and Spencer's on Facebook go, woohoo, we've got a new gluten-free thing. And there's 80 responses from people saying, does it have soya in it? Oh, I bet it's got nuts in it. And you're like, oh, we can't, what are we trying to do here? Spelling can be difficult, yeah, with the correct English, and that can sometimes have an impact on the professionalism. Safeguarding policies, really important when you're working with the vulnerable, with children, whatever, and sometimes that works really well online. Sometimes that can be more of a challenge, and how do we deal with things? Lack of internet connection, work not necessarily supporting platforms, so they're slow to implement something that we're actually doing, maybe in our private life or our personal professional life. And just kind of misinformation, yeah, that whole fake news thing is a challenge. Managing the volume of responses which can come, I'm dealing with that right now with all of your great chat responses. But, it's a nice problem to have. Or if you can't use Zoom or whatever the technology is, if you don't have that. So some really great points here that we have to think about the different people that we're working with and how do we deal with it? What can we as an organisation put in place? What can we as individuals help each other with and help ourselves with? And Mark, you're right, it's a distraction. It would be easy to be on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever it is all day and not actually do the day job. And Andrew mentions phishing as well. There's that, people trying to get your password and things like that. So all sorts of different challenges that we've got. With groups such as Facebook, Slack, your enterprise social network, I want to focus on the getting to know people part. And once you start interacting with people on a regular basis, I think you start to get to know individuals or groups and their approach to things. Perhaps they're always the positive ones, saying, great, that went really well, fantastic, great tips. Or perhaps they're always the first one to respond to something. Or perhaps, like you've said, they're always the one with the negative comment, and you have to deal with that too. And that's dealing with things emotionally ourselves, as well as that professional response and thanking people for what they've shared, for instance. When we look at conversations one-to-one, even when we're not speaking verbally or seeing each other, there's still a lot of nuance that can come across even through, this is an example of a Skype message. Now, this is with somebody that I know well. And she was basically just saying, you don't sound like your bubbly self. And I wasn't. I had this horrible flu a couple of years ago, and I was not a happy bunny. And we hadn't talked verbally. It was just typing on Skype. So this is about knowing and getting to know an individual. And this is part of what this digital body language thing is. This is part about how can we start to get those communications and those connections with people, even if we're not together. A challenge that people have highlighted to me, especially with things like forums or groups, is they can't get to know someone's personality. Another way to look at this is that there's space for freedom of expression. Different parts of our personality can come through in the language we use, the way that we write, and more. Having a look at this is something from my virtual classroom and webinar community. And this post, I think, highlights really nicely the excitement that Ross had seeing a video that I'd shared. So you might not know Ross, but I bet you've got a glimpse of his personality just from these 3 sentences. How about a green tick if you're thinking, yeah, actually, I can really see that? Or a red X if you think, no, I'm not convinced, Joe. So a green tick or a thumbs up if you can see that, red X if you're not convinced. Okay, so I've got a few of you along these wavelengths that we can start seeing this personality coming through. Thank you for your green ticks there. So this is fine for an individual or a forum, but when we're thinking at an organisation level, or we're thinking about presenting ourselves professionally, as you mentioned just now, we need to think about that. So in chat, please, how can you show your personality with this kind of digital body language idea, but thinking about it as you as a professional and also you as an organisation as well? And Alan's put a smiley face there. I'm thinking you're showing your personality there. Alan, thank you very much. So thinking about you as a professional and maybe the organisation you represent on Facebook or Twitter or wherever it is that you're working, how can you show your personality in that professional context? What have we got in chat? Mark says, great question. Tend to use different platforms for different aspects. I think that's really important. I use Instagram to share pictures, and that's much more personal to me, whereas I use Twitter in a professional sense, and I don't tend to share so much personal stuff on there, although I try to be personable. And I think there's a real divide between those two things. Great point. Thank you, Mark. Straight language, says Stephen, so that I'm interpreting that as kind of getting to the point without being rude, with maybe trying to be kind of direct in that sense, so it's less ambiguous and less chance for that to be misinterpreted. Robin says choice of emotive words and emoticons, so being really careful with that. Emojis, if we're thinking individuals, using lots of smiley faces and so on. About 1 million years ago, when I used to teach business communications, you would never have used a smiley face. And in some places, you still don't. But that's getting more credibility now. Show when you're having fun, Jill. I love it. Speak clearly, use smileys. Mix of sentence structures. punctuation, emoticons. And Louise, that's a really good point about the way that we're getting that across. And actually, grammar and punctuation and stuff can actually become more important because we know how that changes the message. And I'm sure you've all seen those memes on Facebook or somewhere. Paula makes a lovely point. It's that knowing your audience. You need to know when it's professional. You need to know when you can let your hair down and have a bit more fun, or whatever is appropriate to that audience. Magda, love that. Using words like fantastic or fab. I use the word awesome a lot for some reason, but that's showing a bit more personality. It's almost like you've got to dial it up a notch to get that across to people. And Maureen says, be aware of who you're addressing yourself to and adapting their language. Really lovely, great points. And those words that we use, just like in physical body language, makes an impact. This is a tweet from Training Journal magazine that I used to work with, and it was promoting a webinar that I was hosting, and this was our guest speaker. In chat, please, what do you think on this tweet shows a bit of personality? So it's from a magazine's Twitter account. It's promoting a webinar. What do you think shows a little bit of personality? What shows a little bit of personality? Yeah, that word faff is coming across pretty strongly. And the word kind of like, you've got this handy link. It's not kind of click the link to register. So faff and handy around, it's very informal language, and it's straight edge talking. We've also got things like the exclamation marks. Where are they? Oh yes, 10 minutes to go with an exclamation mark there. Straight talking and informal. I kind of think I know what you meant, Jill. And it's inviting you in, and the language chosen and the punctuation. Yeah, absolutely. The use of the hashtag as well, and stuff like that. So that's all really great that you kind of picked out of those things. It's a nice photo as well. Yeah, it's a less formal photo, which is really nice. Oh, and Mark saying faff isn't used much in the Midlands or the North. It's quite southern, and you like it. So yeah, it was written by Southerners, I must admit. But good point, well made there. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's that language. You're absolutely right. It could have been much more staid and formal, but this was an approachable kind of tweet that was put out. So it's about, was that right for the audience? Was that right for the event? And so on. So it's just to give you an insight of some of the things you can think about. Okay, so what we've been through here is a lot of different things, a whole load of different topics on digital body language, just to start pinging those ideas around in your brain. And you've got loads of great speakers the rest of today and tomorrow that are absolutely going to add their spin and their detail on these kind of questions and these kind of subjects that are really important for us. There are so many different ways of communicating in our current working world and bringing challenges with them as well as opportunities. Digital body language is a model we can use to help understand others and inform our own actions in the work that we're doing. And social media and enterprise networks, they form the backbone of a lot of the work that we need to do with each other and with clients. So I'm going to ask you a quick question, and then, as Scott says, we're going to go into questions. So from what we've covered today, in chat please, what's your light bulb moment? What's something that you think, aha, that really resonated? It could be something you learned brand new today. It could be something you've experienced, so it might not be what I've told you, or it might not be something you've learned from someone else. It might be something that you did. Or it could be something you knew already, but it's been reminded for you. So share a light bulb moment, and then we will have time for questions. So in the chat, please, what's your light bulb moment? And Jill says, I'm not the only one that dislikes the camera. Yeah, I've got used to it. I don't like seeing it. I try and tune it out. But I know a lot of people like it. I know it's really relevant. You can communicate personality. There are different tricks in Zoom to make it interactive. Use the whiteboard and got interaction going. Mindful of language and how it can be used. Natural presenting. Also, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. The whiteboard. I didn't know about Annotate until today. The tools, the bubbly nature, thank you, Lara. Interaction, like the stamps, and need to look into some of the media platforms. I've never heard of a few. Excellent. Okay, so any last questions? That's what I'd like to come up with. I think you've been asking things as you go throughout. But do you have any questions? So thank you very much for all of those light bulb moments. So any questions that we've got? So we've got just a minute or two to finish those off. So thank you for all of your kind comments. I'm really hoping you've got something out of that. I'm going to leave you with our kind of details on here, and Mike's going to share a couple of things in chat that you can use as resources. Val says timing. Yeah, I've got this planned down to the 30 seconds, if I'm honest. And Mike will share a link in chat of our facilitator guide to help you with that. And Mike's been really helpful, giving me little private messages about whether I'm ahead or behind time, how long I've got left. So Mike, as my producer, has been amazing. Thank you very much. Yeah, you need a mic. Yeah, unfortunately, he's mine. You can't have him. But excellent. Well, I don't think there were too many questions there. We do have our community if you've got more questions. So I think I'm going to hand it back to the IEP. Thank you very much indeed for having me. Lovely for you to invite me.
Hi, thank you, Joe and Mike. A wonderful session as ever. Thank you very much. We went even further and delved into it today. I'm really interested in the digital body language. That's really, really clever and very insightful. So thank you very much, Joe. Everyone, thank you very much for attending. Coming up, we have the responder sessions to this session. So responding to Joe's presentation, we have Matt Kingswood from our partners, the Digital College, who will be looking at some of the biggest challenges to people learning online. And also at the same time is Maria Smith from Bounce Australia and Bounce USA, who will lead you through the key why, what, and how of coaching in a digital context. So once again, thank you for attending. Thank you to Joe and Mike for such a wonderful presentation again. And we will see you back here on the specific link for the session that you've chosen, because they're running at the same time, in about 10 minutes. Just enough time to get a brew and a snack, and we'll see you very soon for information sharing and points of view from the Digital College and Bounce Australia and Bounce USA. So thank you very much and see you very, very soon.